This episode of The Bear on FX and Hulu is the most accurate panic attack I have ever seen on TV. I love mental health and I love to teach. Let's break it down. Viewer discretion advised. Notice that he's shaking his hand almost uncontrollably. This is a byproduct of his racing thoughts going through his head. He's got to control something, so he's controlling his hand. Yeah, right now, Carmi's life is spinning out of control. His eyes are closed, his jaw is clenched, and all he's thinking about are all of the terrible relationships that he's had in his life. His girlfriend, his brother passed away, his mom. This is a sign of life crashing in on you. And it feels like everything in your world is spinning out of control. That is a classic example of a panic attack. Carmi is really struggling here, and you can see it in his eyes. He's thinking about all the relationships that he's had and all the failures and how his life in that moment feels like it's out of control. Panic attacks have what I call a cognitive chain analysis. It starts with an activating event. That's the trigger, something that's triggered the panic. And then it leads to a thought or many thoughts, and then it leads to emotion. It could be stress, it could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be lots of different types of emotions. And then it goes to a behavior. You're doing something. And with Carmi, if you remember, he was shaking his hand, he was going outside and he was looking down, his eyes were closed, his jaw was clenched, he was tightening his fist, and he was sweaty. And so all these things that were happening in his mind that produced him feeling a certain way, and then a behavior, and then there's an outcome. And the outcome typically starts a whole nother chain reaction. Perhaps one of the best ways to think of a panic attack is to think about the bell curve of a panic cycle. It always starts with the thoughts, something that you are thinking about, and maybe there you have evidence to think about it, but then you add to it the assumptions, jumping to conclusions, and everything is starting to pile up. And that bell curve is starting to go up. And then it reaches its climax. It hits a peak. And at that moment is when your life feels like it's crashing down, when panic attack feels like it's so real that you're going to maybe it feels like you're going to have a heart attack. I have had many clients talk about how they thought they were having a panic attack because their chest was tightening. They really felt like they were losing it, and they ran to the ER only to find out that they were having a panic attack. So at the peak of the bell curve of the panic cycle, that's where it gets really intense, and then it comes down. And that's the best thing to think about with a panic attack. There's a time duration. And for many, the time duration is about 10 minutes. Others could go to a half an hour or maybe a little longer, but it always ends. And when you're in the middle, when you're in the peak of panic cycle, try to remember that it will end. You're going to get through this. Perhaps one of the most frustrating things about a panic attack is what I call a rapid chain reaction. It's when you have multiple thoughts that are going around in your mind and they're all tangled like a knot. You're thinking about maybe a failed relationship or a high intense, stressful situation, maybe a failure, maybe you lost your job, maybe it's going through a divorce. Whatever you're experiencing, you're feeling like a failure and you're a loser and life is spinning out of control. You don't see a future for your life. You're only focused on life is terrible right now. That's that rapid chain reaction. They all work together. Thought that leads to another thought that leads to another thought that leads to an emotion, which leads to another emotion, and then leads to a behavior and an outcome like we talked about. It all twists around. It's all tied up, and it's hard to untangle it when you're in the midst of the panic cycle. There are many different symptoms of a panic attack. I've had so many clients feel like they're going to have a heart attack, and then they rush to the ER only to find out they're having a panic attack. They spent hours at the ER worrying that something was going to happen, and they get to the doctor and they say, you know what, you're just having a panic attack. Give it some time, you'll calm down. And that's what happens. You're in the ER for 3 hours, and by the time you see a doctor, you're okay. It's when it causes the rapid heart rate which then that can produce rapid thoughts. And that can then, it's a domino effect. It's all in this rapid panic cycle. And then it leads to other symptoms like you start to get sweaty, you start to get dizzy, and it feels like your life is spinning out of control. You might be shaking, your hands might be shaking, like Carmi's were in that episode. And so when you are experiencing panic attack symptoms, it's scary because it really feels like something is going on, not just emotionally, but something's going on with your physical well being. And then that just fuels the panic. Oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I've got to get to the hospital. But it's important to remember that the panic attack has that window, that bell curve that I talked about. There's always a start, there's always a peak, and there's always an end. And sometimes just knowing that it's going to end, sometimes just knowing that you're having a panic attack, not a heart attack. When you realize that your mind is racing and all these thoughts that you're having, that's producing all of these emotions, which then trigger all the behaviors. When you realize that life is spinning out of control right now, but I'm having a panic attack. Okay, so let's talk about some strategies that you can try when you have a panic attack. I call these panic disruptors. We want to disrupt the panic thoughts that you're having before they get to an emotions. And some strategies that you can do. Number one, get out your phone, open the notes app on your phone, and create a plan. Do a step-by-step, step 1, step 2, step 3 of the things that you are going to do the next time that you're in a panic attack. Think about them now before you're panicky. Right now, you're calm. So think about what are some things that will help you get out of that panic attack and write them down on your phone notes or somewhere where you'll see them. You want to be reminded while you're in a more logic, more calm state, because you're not going to think about these things when you're in a panic state. The next panic disruptor is cold immersion. If you're at home, this is great. You go to the kitchen, get a bowl, throw ice in it, put water in it, and then dunk your face in the water for a few seconds and out and back in, out and back in. Here's what happens. When your skin touches the cold water, it sends a signal to your brain and it disrupts the panic. And that's what we want. I had a client years ago who had panic attacks while he was walking. He would walk back and forth. And while he was walking, he would, at the peak, at the height of that panic bell curve that I talked about, he reached that. And what happened, it got so intense, he fell and fainted each time. And instead of putting his face in cold water, we came up with just take a cold shower when that happens. When you're starting to feel the panic rise before it gets to the peak on the bell curve, get a shower, go in, put on cold water. I know it's uncomfortable. That's the point. We want to disrupt those panic thoughts, and cold water will do that. The other panic disruptor I like to talk about is deep breathing. Now, this is something that it could be more difficult when you're in the midst of the panic, but when you feel the panic starting to rise, that's your cue. Now, remember to make your note, your action plans. This needs to be on it. I talk about smell the flowers, blow out the candles. And you envision yourself smelling flowers. You close your mouth and inhale through your nose, really, really big inhale. Fill up your lungs, hold your breath for a few seconds, and then you blow out just like you're blowing out all the candles on your birthday cake. And for some of us, that's a lot of candles. But that's the point. You want to blow out as long and as hard as you can, and do that 8 times slowly. 8 times slowly. And that will help disrupt the panic. The other one is just kind of simple. You talk to somebody. You have somebody that you designate as your panic disruptor person and be able to reach out to them when you're getting ready or in a panic attack. You can call them, you can text them, or if they're near you, you can talk to them right then and there. Put that person in your phone, on your action plan, and that person will know to help you walk through the panic attack. There's one more panic disruptor that I wanted to talk about, and it's called active observation. This is something that you can do wherever you're at. Remember when Carmi was having his panic attack in the alleyway? He could do it right then. You just look around and you use your senses. So pick 5 things that you can see, the shape, the color, and then what are 5 things that you can hear, the traffic going by, maybe a car, maybe a cat or a dog. And then what are 5 things that you feel? You're trying to be active in that observation. You want to be in the moment with your surroundings. Your panic takes you out of the moment and puts you in this world where it's spinning. It's a panic that you are afraid that everything is starting to crumble. Everything is starting to implode in that moment. So try these different panic disruptors. I think they're going to be really helpful for you. Write them down, put it in your action plan on your phone so you have them right there for you. So this season of The Bear with Carmi having his panic attack is one of the most realistic panic attacks I've ever seen on TV. If you have had a panic attack, you know what that's like. You know what it's like to have your life spinning out of control. Now, for some people have panic attacks all the time, and that could be a panic disorder. For others, a panic attack comes just occasionally. Sometimes when it's an extreme stressful situation, a panic can happen. But multiple ones, frequent panic attacks, could be a panic disorder. So if you think that you have a panic disorder, talk to a therapist. Work through these tools that I talked about, but also work through tools that you can talk about with your therapist. If you have a panic attack, occasionally, hopefully, these action steps, these strategies, these panic disruptors will help you. But if you are struggling with these on a very regular basis, I want to encourage you to talk to a therapist to help give you a plan, give you accountability, and give you support that you need.